Today we're making a Morat, a mulberry mead.
Hi, I'm Brian.
I'm Derica, and you're watching City Steading Brews.
Check out the shirt. Link in the description. Anyway, so yeah, we're making a Morat, which is actually a mulberry mead. Now, if you've never had mulberries, because they're only like certain parts of the country and whatever. But anyway, we grow mulberries in our backyard, as in like we have about 8 mulberry trees. Do you think we like mulberries? I've never brewed with them before. They've been sitting in a bag for a year, frozen, to use them, and they're now in here. And we froze them on purpose. It does 2 things. First, you only collect so many a day, so we throw them in a bag, throw them in the freezer. Second, freezing them, when you defrost that, it breaks up the cell walls, letting all the juices run freely, and you get more sugars out of them that way. It's a lot easier. We are going to be using a food mill to process them, though. We'll get to that in a little bit. To make this, you're going to need mulberries. I have probably, what do you think that is? Like between 5 and 10 pounds. I didn't actually measure. I probably should have, but I didn't. We'll find out how much liquid we get. That's the actual measurement that we're going to use. We're going to be using D47 yeast today by Lalvin. We're also going to be using Sweet Squeeze Florida honey, which there's links to that stuff below too. I actually really like this honey. I get it from Amazon.
This is their wildflower version. It's raw and unfiltered.
Yep. Yeah, we're using wildflower for this because I think any other flavored honey would just, the nuances would be gone. There's just no reason.
Clover would also be another good option.
Yeah, clover would be fun. You could use like the citrus ones and all that, but I think you're going to lose some of that nuance. Another thing that I decided to add to this, just because I know the mulberries are pretty sweet, but they're also very tart. But I also wanted to have a little bit more mouthfeel. So, in keeping with the mulberry idea, and I do like making my teas, we collected a couple of mulberry leaves. We dried them because we actually make mulberry tea. It's good for headaches and stomach problems, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong. We mix them with lime and other things and make all kinds of teas, but that's another show. What I did though is I took some mulberry leaves and I put them in a tea strainer just like that, and I put it in some hot water. It's been sitting in there for a few minutes. There's probably 4 or 5 ounces of water. Now, what that's going to do is add a little bit of complexity to this. It's going to give just a tiny bit more of nutrient for the yeast to work with, which, the berries are already going to add some, and it adds just that extra level of to give this a little bit more than just being a fruit mead, okay? I like to do that because the more things you can put in there, the better the meads tend to come out. Anyway, the first thing we want to do
is we sanitized all of these in the red bucket of sanitization.
Somebody made a comment. Watch Brian die a little inside every time Derica says that. Something that it was pretty funny because apparently I make a face every time she does it. I probably just did it again. I don't even realize I'm doing it because I forget that she's gonna do it, and then I go, oh yeah, that's right. I did actually make that animation though.
He did.
All right, so what I want to do is I'm gonna ladle out a little bit of our juice into the self-stirring cup, so that I can get our yeast started. Oh, wow. Wait till you see this. Look at that. Now that is just literally, these berries were frozen. We put them into a bowl and let them defrost. That's it. Look at that color. That's amazing. It's just so deep red. That's literally just from the frozen berries leaking out their juices. It smells earthy. Like it doesn't smell like you'd expect it to, because we actually have a mix of very ripe and mostly ripe berries. The mostly ripe ones add a lot more tartness, so that's where that earthy. It's really interesting. I think this is going to be an awesome mead, actually. I'm using Lalvin D47 yeast. This is like a 14-15% tolerance. We've actually gotten it up as high as 18% just recently on something. I'm going to use half a packet, because that's my rule. I'm making a 1 gallon batch, so if I'm doing a 1 gallon, I use about half a packet, and all I do is just like that. Pour a bunch in until it feels like about half. It's about half. hand this to my lovely assistant. And then this is the whole reason for the self-stirring cup.
It has ridges on the inside, so when
Yeah.
you swirl it around, it breaks up any particles.
Yep, works wonderfully. It's actually from a Magic Bullet blender thing.
We have links to them in our City Steading store.
And then I just take that, set it to the side. That's hydrating the yeast, okay? We're just getting it going, waking it up, letting it do its thing. The next step is we want to make juice out of that. Now, another thing that we're going to do is we're going to measure this to know how much sugar it actually has in it. And this is where this is an interesting video for us and an interesting recipe, because I don't actually have a finished recipe. I don't really know how much honey I'm going to have to add to that. And that's something that I think every brewer should know how to do, is calculate this, figure out that, and then get it all together to be where you want it to be. Now, I know that I want this to be about a 1.120 to 1.125 original gravity, because I want it to stop at about the 1.020 mark, which is like 15%, giving me just a little bit of residual sweetness at the end. Well, some people would say a lot. To me, that's a little. And a fully fermented out beverage that I don't need to stabilize with any chemicals or anything like that, because we don't do those things. Some people have been asking lately, so I thought you should know. But what I'm going to do now is basically mill these berries. So I'm just gonna scoop some into the thing here and start spinning. It's gonna be messy. But it wouldn't be a City Steading episode if it was clean. We always have to have some mess. Don't we? I usually do it. See, the juices are already coming right through. You can see it. But we have stems and seeds and all kinds of stuff here that we really don't want in the brew. I'm not too offended if a little bit gets in, because they do add just a touch of nutrient. While I'm doing this, I'm probably just going to fast forward, cut this so that you don't have to listen to this sound the whole time, because it's not going to be pretty.
You want to be careful.
Okay, so that was like 5 minutes maybe to do all that. And it's been reduced down to a mash that, you know, the chickens will love that. And we have all this lovely juice here. Now, what's that?
I was just trying to see how much it is.
It looks like, oh, that's milliliters. What's the other side? It's like 1.5 pints, 2 pints maybe. It's not a lot with the little bit that was there. 2 pints. So that's why we're doing a 1 gallon batch. Now, I could have put the solids right into the batch too. I'm not doing that because I like this to be, I like non-solid. I like all juice brewing. It's a lot cleaner, a lot easier to deal with. Now, I see stuff floating in here, and that's okay. It's all going to settle out with the yeast. It's perfectly fine. It does add just that little bit of extra nutrient, like we said before. What I want to find out, though, is just how much sugar is in this juice. Now, because I only have that much, I'm not that worried about it. It's not going to make that much of a difference in my final brew, but it's going to add a lot of flavor. But I'm also thinking we have more mulberries. I may, in secondary, sit it in some mulberries again to get even more mulberry flavor in. And that's a question that comes up a lot. People always ask us, should I put the fruit in primary or secondary? Yes, is the answer. Put it in both. When you put it in primary, you get the essence of that fruit because it's fermenting. When you put it in secondary, you get the fruity flavors because it's not actually fermenting. It's just, basically, it's like when you make limoncello, you're taking the essence of the lemon out of the lemon and putting it into some sort of spirit. Same idea. So the juice, it's a little thick because there is some pulp and stuff in here. So I'm kind of jiggling it around a little bit more. It looks like 1040, 1.040. That's almost as sugary as commercial juices, which is pretty interesting and cool because they usually come out to 1050 to 1055. Now, we are going to take another reading later. This was just the preliminary to get an idea of what this juice does. So if you could take this from me and stick it into turbos, I'm going to pour this back in. See all the goop in the bottom? Yeah.
I wanted to rinse that before.
Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do is we're going to take all this and we're going to pour it through a funnel right into our bottle. We're going to get this started. I want to shake up those solids so that they don't settle at the bottom now. This will start to give me an idea of how much we have. Now, if this is a 1040, it's really not going to affect things much. I'm probably still going to use about 2.5 to 3 pounds of honey. I'm just pouring this in. So we end up with what looks like about a quart, maybe, if that, of the actual juice. Which is cool. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. They say, though, like when you're making grape wines and things like that, that you need 20 pounds of grapes to make 1 gallon of wine. So I'm not surprised at all that this requires, you know, a pretty significant amount. So this might be a little bit light on the mulberry flavor at first. That's what worries me, but we won't know until it's done. So 3 pounds of honey will give me a 1.105 or thereabouts gravity all on its own. That much of that divided by 4, it's like maybe 10 points. So we'll come to like 1.115, close to my 1.120 mark, but not quite there. So I might add like 3.25 pounds of honey. Let's just see. Okay, so I did 3 pounds, 4 ounces of honey. Now I'm going to do is put a little water in there to get some of the honey out of the funnel and give us a little something to mix. So if you could hand me the pitcher of water.
3 pounds, 4 ounces.
3 pounds, 4 ounces. So now that I have some liquid in here with the honey, with the juice, what I want to do is put a stopper in, and I know I have a solid stopper somewhere. I don't know where it is. So I just put my thumb over it and I shake it up. Also known as shaking the bejesus out of it. The idea is you want it to completely mix all that honey with the other liquid. We're also letting some oxygen in there. You see the bubbles forming? Getting some oxygen in it. What oxygen does is it helps the yeast to start building a colony, but once fermentation started, you don't want to add more. So it's good to add it now, bad to add it in just a few days. Some people have been having problems when they're making ferments too, where they said, oh, my honey settled out. Well, it didn't settle out. You didn't mix it. Because honey won't settle back out of solution this way, not for a very, very, very long time. It'll be fermented out long before it would be able to do that. So make sure you shake it up real good. A couple of minutes is all it takes. I think having some of those solids in there helped a little. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't see any residual honey left in there.
Now, we like to do 1 gallon brews, particularly for mead, simply because of this shaking technique.
Yeah, it gets hard.
Shaking the 3 gallons and particularly the 5 gallons gets more problematic. So you want to fill it only enough to have enough liquid to mix.
Right, in a 5 gallon, just put about that much liquid in. Then you can swirl it around and swish it up really, really good. Just be really careful. They're heavy. So, here's our tea. You want to be careful, because I'm going to be putting this into this liquid. I don't want to put my yeast in right away. I want to mix this through, so that way I don't introduce any extra. Yeah, see, it's still pretty hot. I would say this is easily enough to kill the yeast. But pouring it in here won't be a problem now. See, I told you, gotta make a mess somehow. I spilled a little. Now, when that mixes through, that liquid won't be any more, really more than mostly room temperature. So now what I'm going to do, take this guy back out. I'm going to put my yeast in, give it one last stir. I don't know why I took this out, because I'm a blonde. What can I say? No offense to any blondes out there. But that's our yeast. We're just going to pour this right in. That's called pitching yeast. Go figure. I don't make this stuff up. Now I'm going to put some water in. I don't want to go all the way up. I want to go to probably only about there, just in case, because things tend to foam up a little bit when they start fermenting, so we don't want to have any explosions. How daring am I willing to be? See, there's this constant constant battle in that you want to get as much out of it as you can, but you don't want it to explode.
So the space between the top of our beverage and the top of our fermentation vessel is called headspace. And you want to have enough headspace to create a buffer that when fermentation occurs, you don't overflow your vessel. But you want to also have a smaller amount of headspace so that you limit the risk of oxygenation of your brew once it's fermenting.
Okay, so now that that's all in there, put that back. We're going to take a reading again. So now I need my turkey baster and the graduated cylinder and the hydrometer. And the reason we take a reading now is this way we know how this brew is going to go. We know where it started at. We know as it's going, we can take intermediate readings. And then at the end, we know, is it done? Did it stick? Did it do what it's supposed to do or not? Basically, that's the gist. Now, there's plenty of stuff in here for the yeast to eat, not just the sugars. So I am not worried about this one getting stuck at all. In fact, I'm actually worried that it might be a very active fermentation and be a little bit of a mess.
If you do get a really active fermentation, we did a special video on airlocks and blow-off tubes. We'll link that to for you in the description below. So if you do see it start to foam up into your airlock, you can switch over to a blow-off tube and you'll be fine.
In the words of George Costanza, it has a pinkish hue. You never really watched that show, did you?
Not really.
He was talking about skin, I think. I don't know. I watched like some episodes. I don't know if you want to put that in there or not. It's kind of messy. Alright, so here is our original gravity reading. And it's probably higher than I wanted. Actually. Stop sticking to my fingers. 1. It looks like 1.114, but let's make sure. 1.116. Okay, I'll take it. That's pretty close to my target. I probably could put a little bit more honey in there if I really, really wanted to, but it's not a big deal. Some people throw that away. And somebody said the other day, oh, it's because dust and other particles can fall in there. I'm going to disagree, because if they could fall in that, they could fall in that. So I don't really know that that makes much sense to me. I don't mean to be defensive about it, but that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So now what we're going to do, done, it's ready to go. We're going to put a stopper in it. We're going to put an airlock in it. Why do we use an airlock? Glad you asked. The stopper we put in there, I want to dry that. By the way, our towels are clean. Somebody said, oh, you take it out of the sanitizer and you put it on a nasty towel. These towels have more sanitizer in them than anything else at this point. So I'm going to put the stopper in there. The airlock, the way this works, I like this style of airlock where the gases push up, push this level side, this side down, and that side up. And then the bubbles will start coming out. What that makes is a one-way valve, kind of like an S-trap in your sink, okay? So good gas or bad gases go out, nothing comes back in, including actual bugs. This little lid here, some people leave them off. I don't, and here's why. They're tiny little holes. It takes a tiny bug to get in there, like little gnats and stuff. But if you leave this off, larger bugs can get in, and you don't want one of them to clog it or anything like that. Bad things can happen. So we're just going to stick that in there like that. Check the stopper, make sure it doesn't pop out, because they sometimes go right back up. That's why you dry it first. And now we wait. We can sit here and watch this all day. It's going to take probably about 6 hours till it starts. Once it does, though, you'll start seeing bubbles. I say 6 hours because that's my experience with most of our brews. Do not freak out if after a day you don't see anything yet, or 2 days. After 3 days, if you don't see anything, pitch some more yeast. That's probably what's needed. Your yeast might not have been too alive. If after like 6 or 7 days you still don't have anything, recheck everything. Check your gravity. Make sure that you didn't mess up somewhere, because we've had people put way too much sugars in, way not enough sugars in.
We had a recent viewer who had a really great fermentation for a day, and then it stopped the visual activity that he was seeing, and he was concerned that something went awry, and I didn't have enough information to help him out, but he figured out on his own. He was using one of the plastic buckets,
Oh, yeah.
and he just lost.
Watch your seals.
His seal was
and
loose.
same with these. If the stopper pushes up, you lose all your seal and it won't do anything. A sure sign is if you see positive pressure in there, something is happening or did happen. So as long as you see that, you know you have a seal. Okay, that's the trick there. If you don't see any activity, well, give it a few weeks. How long am I going to let this sit? Probably like a month or more. I don't rush these things. Let it go. There's no rush. How long will it actually take to ferment? Anywhere from 3 to 10 days, probably. But I like it to clear out. There's a lot of little solid pieces in here. I want that stuff gone. I want it to fall to the bottom, form a nice yeast cake, something that won't get sucked up when we go to rack it. I don't like having grit and sediment in my brews, so we're going to let this sit for a while.
If you're impatient and you want to shorten your time, once you stop seeing visual activity, you can go ahead and take a gravity reading on that and then reseal it back up and let it sit for a week and then take another gravity reading. If those readings haven't changed, your fermentation is done.
We say a week. You can do 3 or 4 days if you really want to, but don't push it. The whole thing about brewing is it takes time and patience. These are not things that we can rush. I always like to say this. Mead wants to make itself. We just need to get the heck out of the way. That's the truth. This is going to go under my desk. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to shake it. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to test it. I'm not going to do anything. And in a month, I'll go, oh, I wonder if that's done yet. That's about how much attention I give it. It's really, really simple. You don't have to babysit these things.
The basic science behind this is that we wanted enough sugars in here so that when the tolerance of the yeast is met, we still have enough remaining sugars to have the level of sweetness that we're looking for.
If you don't understand what any of that just meant, we did a video on calculating ABV where we talk about that. It's a little much to explain in this video because we're already running a little bit long. So we're going to cut this off here. But we do have links to other videos, and we have lots of stuff like that. If you like this video, make sure to give us a like. If you like what we're doing, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to be a little bit more behind the scenes, we do have a VIP lounge on Facebook that you can get there only by Patreon and Subscribestar. Links in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.